Well, as I was introduced, I work at Mary Evans Picture Library, and we are a long-established historical resource of imagery, and we have a fantastic magazine archive. So what I thought I'd do was sort of dive into the archive and see what I could find on Gladys, and find images which speak about her style and how that kind of interplayed with her work with Noël Coward. So we start with this image, which obviously that image of Gertrude Lawrence and Noël Coward together is so iconic, but this is a sort of riff on that pose, you know, Noël with another female collaborator. And it's a wonderful picture that sums up their relationship. They were very close friends from 1921 when they met. He first met her in Alassio in Italy, and Alassio is interesting that they met there because people know about high society traveling to the Riviera, but Alassio was also a real kind of enclave for British holidaymakers at the time in the sort of 20s and 30s. So Noël Coward was at the English Club in Alassio and did a few songs, and he noticed a young woman in the front row who was helplessly giggling at his singing, and afterwards he had to go up to her and ask what she had found so funny. And she said it wasn't so much the singing, it was just the way he looked when he was doing it. And anyway, what that triggered was a lifelong friendship between the two, and an incredible synergy in terms of their creativity, which was very, very much on a sort of similar plane with each other. And Gladys went on to collaborate and be the stage designer for so many of his productions. But in herself, she was a very sort of chic woman. Should we have a look at the next picture, actually, Brad? There we go. I wanted to show this image, which I was sort of delighted to find, which is from the Sketch magazine from 1915, August 1915, when she married. And there she is, bottom right, Gladys Treby of Devon, from a good family in Devon. And there she is, aged, well, I suppose she'd be 21 then, getting married to an army officer, Everard Calthrop. So I thought it'd be really interesting to put this in, showing Gladys as, you know, one of many young women who had probably gone to a good school, and she'd gone to finishing school in Paris, and they're all lining up to get married to their gallant army officers, and she's just one of them. And so it seems to be an incredible leap to go from that to that picture we've just seen of this, you know, just frightfully chic woman, very self-possessed, very confident, and a real kind of Renaissance woman. You know, I want to talk about her fashion, but I also want to talk about how a lot of what she did, her lifestyle, was all part of that kind of image, this image she cultivated of just being very, very stylish and chic. So I can't remember what's coming up next, but show me and then I can talk about it. Ah, yeah, this is a group at the Chelsea Arts Club ball in, I think, 1926. Now there's Gladys on the left, and she's next to Ivor Novello, and next to Ivor Novello is Gladys Cooper, and on the end, obviously, is Noël. So this is a great picture. Chelsea Arts Club ball, it was a huge, big annual event which sort of mixed high society with bohemian artistic circles, and everybody came dressed up to the nines. And there's Gladys wearing sort of a Spanish mantilla, I suppose. And what I quite like, actually, is Brad talked about how the theatre was a complete area for people to share fashion, and not just on the stage, but also what people were wearing in the audience. And Gladys, who, you know, was responsible for all the behind the scenes stuff that was going on in Noël Coward's shows. In herself, she was quite a sort of fashion, you know, a real sort of fashion plate, and she was often written about. There's a regular column in the Illustrated Sporting Dramatic News written by Florence Roberts called Fashion in Stage and Stalls, and there's this wonderful little clip saying Mrs. Gladys Calthrop, when accompanying Noël to the first night of Caroline, she is described as severely eaten, cropped and picturesquely Spanish shawled. Now, Spanish shawls were such a fashionable item in the 1920s. So she sort of dressed up, you know, a little bit. And it looks like Ivor Novello is some kind of sort of Romany type, you know, probably about to dance a tango in a back alley or something, I imagine. But anyway, so Gladys is channeling a bit of Spanish style there, which is very 1920s. Let's go on to the next picture. Yes. So this is a house that she bought near Ashford in Kent, not too far from where Noël lived, and again featured in the Sketch magazine. And she converted an old mill. And she just, you know, I think this was not the norm. This was a woman who was very sort of confident in her choices, in her lifestyle choices. And this was her bolt hole, which was this sort of wonderful rustic retreat, where as you can see, she's keeping goats and things. And it's styled in, you know, quite a, probably a rustic style, you know, compared to some of these incredibly modern sets she is producing for Noël's plays. This is sort of the opposite, but I kind of wanted to show this because, again, it was unusual enough to be featured in the magazine. This was actually double page spread. This is just one page of it. Let's go on to the next picture. And this is her studio in Westminster, which was often described in the press as being very, very, very chic, very white and cream walls. You see that sofa down there. She was often pictured curled up on that, drawing or reading, smoking. I've seen quite a lot of photographs of her on there, and that's very much, you know, I suppose this is urban Gladys, and the mill was country Gladys, and she could sort of skip between the two and always look very stylish while doing it. Let's see what's coming up next. I'm not sure where this was taken, this picture, but it's appeared in the Bystander in 1936 with a brief profile about her. And one thing that is often reported, she made her own clothes, which I don't suppose is particularly unusual because she designed costumes as well as stage sets. None of these, but she would not design day wear. She felt that was too arty to, you know, that costume designers shouldn't design day wear, but she would design evening wear. And I do wonder about that outfit, whether that is one of her own creations. It could possibly be. But, you know, she knew how to dress. She always looks impeccably turned out. She kept this very short haircut, even when people were growing their hair. And she was just very, very neat. Let me just share with you a few more quotes from the press. I rather like this one, which is talks of Gladys when she's seen again with Noël, bringing up the rear of the convoy of Noël's sort of inner circle, that is, a trim little spick and span little galleon in her own right, is the person responsible for 4 words which on any theatre programme are an absolute guarantee of good taste. Decor by Gladys Calthrop. Let's go on to the next one. All right, well, this is at the Cinque Ports Flying Club, and there's Gladys, and I think that's Joyce Carey next to Noël there. So high society and aviation were a match made in heaven in the 1930s, and Gladys learned how to fly. And she didn't just learn how to fly and sort of dabble in it, she actually flew over to Paris to deliver costumes to actresses, things like that. And there she is, looking super stylish in her aviator's gear. So this is all part of this, you know, wonderful lifestyle that she had. I should mention that her, you know, she separated from her husband. She had one son, Hugo, who actually was killed in the Second World War, but we never see Gladys the mother. And I believe her son was probably looked after by her own mother more than herself. I wanted to show this one, and this actually was published in 1940, but I'm not sure if it might have been taken a little earlier. However, what I really love about it is a monogram jumper. And monogrammed outfits was such the rage in the sort of 1930s. You would see the Duchess of Windsor wearing them and things. So again, it's just Gladys on the, you know, just on point with fashion. And she also really loved jewelry, and even her Times obituary talked about her penchant for barbaric jewelry. And I like that big rock on her hand there. But she isn't wearing earrings, and she often wore lots of earrings as well, and sort of, you know, lots of necklaces. And then finally, I want to share this one. Now, this photograph, I think the actual print of it is in the National Portrait Gallery, but it's by a photographer called Howard Coster. Now, Howard Coster billed himself as Howard Coster, photographer of men, and he always gave sort of, you know, portrayed his subjects in very dramatic lighting. And I think it's interesting. I don't want to particularly read anything too deeply into this, but I do think it's interesting that Gladys decided to choose Howard Coster for this really splendid, dignified portrait of herself. This is 1936, and what I think is really interesting about what she's wearing is it's showing the kind of more sinuous bias cut fashions of the mid-1930s just beginning to give way to something a little bit more structured in the later 1930s. And that blouse that she's wearing with a sort of braided frogging, I've seen her in a couple of different outfits with that, and it almost you know, recalls various historical costumes that she had created for Noël. But I think it's really, you know, she's portrayed really fantastically there. And, you know, the wonderful thing about Gladys is she was very close to Noël. They collaborated on so many different projects, but she also went off and did her own thing as well. And Noël was very supportive of that. She stayed in New York. She worked with Ava Le Gallienne's Civic Repertory Company as the art director. So she wasn't, you know, she wasn't in Noël's shadow. She was very much a strong creative individual in her own right, and her own personal style certainly reflects that.
Thank you so much, Lucy. A lot of wonderful insights there. Two little footnotes I'd give, and then we'll move on to Timothy's presentation. One of the key things, because they were so close, is that Gladys's sets and costumes often were created at the very moment that the plays that she was creating them for, Noël's work, were evolving. They would talk about these things from the inception of an idea. Yeah. And she was often designing sets while he was writing the plays. So these environments were being created very much in tandem with each other. His thinking about how the play progressed dramatically would be based on her ideas for the sets, and vice versa. They would influence each other enormously. She had a huge impact.
She always attended rehearsals as well. So, you know, those ideas developed as the play took shape as well.
Exactly. And, you know, you were being a little bit discreet, but, you know, it was pretty well known that throughout most of her life, most of her relationships were with women, yeah, which was often, you know, a very important subtext to this world. And it's something that we talk about in the exhibition. So much of this, especially creative design world that was around Coward, were gay and lesbian members of the theatrical community who also gave each other incredibly creative support. As well as moral support, and which must have been a difficult time. That Chelsea Arts Ball was one of the few public occasions where people could be openly gay in the social life of the time. And so all of that also filters into their work together, which I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.